They thought she'd break within a week. Quiet, small, dressed in soft browns and muted shoes that made no sound on the old tile. A black woman in her 40s with two big glasses and a name no one remembered after first hearing it. To the students, she was just another placeholder, a face that would vanish before they had to learn it. To the faculty, a mild inconvenience, one more idealist chewing through her dream. But on the third day, when the heat was thick and the hallway fans hummed like wasps, she stood before a room full of sneering ninth graders and did not ask for respect. She gave them history, and when she finished speaking, low, deliberate, ancient somehow, even the boldest of them fell silent, like churchgoers hearing a voice they hadn't known they missed. The door to Jefferson High creaked on its hinges as Miss Allison stepped in that morning, her skirt brushing lightly against her knees, a tote bag heavy with books slung over one shoulder. The walls were a dull mustard yellow, paint peeling in quiet rebellion. The scent of bleach mingled with hot dust. The overhead lights flickered. Somewhere down the hall, a locker slammed. Then laughter followed, loud and unkind. She paused in the hallway, adjusting the strap on her shoulder. A voice behind her, clipped, nasal, said, "You must be the new English, room 2B, good luck." The woman didn't stop walking. Just a glance, one eyebrow raised like punctuation, then gone. No introduction, no handshake. Allison gave a soft nod to no one in particular and continued down the corridor, heels clicking now on worn linoleum. Her classroom had a fan in the window, broken. The desks were etched with names and dates, some going back 20 years. She ran her fingers over one. Tamika, 98. Her nails were short and clean. She wrote her name on the board, Miss Allison, in steady strokes, then opened the windows as far as they'd go. The morning air was thick, the Georgia humidity laying itself over the room like wet wool. She could already feel the sweat rising under her blouse. The first students came in loud, dragging their feet, backpacks half-zipped. One boy with long legs and a cocky tilt to his chin leaned in his chair so far back it creaked. "Another one," he muttered to no one. "How long she thinks she's gonna last?" A girl with purple braids giggled and smacked her gum. Allison didn't respond. She looked at him a beat longer than necessary, her face unreadable. Then she turned and laid a stack of thin books on the desk beside her. Paperbacks, spines soft with use. The cover on top showed the faded face of Langston Hughes. "Seriously?" the boy said, louder now. "Man, why we always gotta read dead black poets?" The class laughed, that tight, sharp laughter kids do when they're bored and cruel and want to impress each other. Allison's voice came quiet, calm, because they lived louder than you do. The room stilled, not silent, but startled. A boy coughed. A pencil rolled off a desk and clattered to the floor. She opened the book. "This is a poem written during the war, but not the one you're thinking of." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Later, in the teacher's lounge, the coffee was burnt. Someone had left a half-eaten apple on the counter, brown at the edges. Allison sat with her lunchbox, plastic, blue, unopened in her lap. She'd spent the night planning the next 2 weeks, then forgotten to pack anything edible. A woman in a floral blouse glanced at her. "You're from South Carolina, right?" Allison nodded. So this heat doesn't scare you?" There was something just under the words, not quite humor, not quite kindness. Allison gave a polite smile. "No, ma'am, just reminds me of home." The woman shrugged and bit into a dry carrot stick. That night, she sat on the floor of her small apartment, her father sleeping in the next room. The ceiling fan wobbled above her, making a dull knocking sound. On her lap were old letters, the paper gone thin. One in particular, written in dark blue ink decades ago, had been folded so many times the creases threatened to tear. Her grandmother's handwriting curled and firm. You are not invisible, even if they do not see you yet. Stay steady. She laid it beside her and wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. The next morning, the classroom felt different. The air heavier. Students slouched in with more purpose now, as if testing her. One boy, the same lanky one, mimicked her voice as she took roll. "Miss Allison," he drawled, loud enough for the back row to hear. Laughter again. She paused mid-mark. Her hand stopped on the clipboard. She turned to face him fully. "You think I sound funny?" The boy looked surprised, then smirked. "I think you sound like a cartoon." She walked to her desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a smaller book. The pages were worn, corners curled. Without another word, she began reading. First in English, then, without pause, in Spanish. The same poem, no explanation. Somewhere near the back, a girl straightened in her seat. "You speak Spanish?" someone asked. Allison didn't answer. She kept reading. When she finished, she closed the book, softly. My grandmother taught herself to read with candlelight. She wasn't allowed in schools like this, but she taught others, on porches, in kitchens, in churches. She did it until her hands shook too much to hold the pages. Silence settled over the room like dust. "That's why I'm here," she said. No one moved. Then the boy, the same one, raised his hand. Awkward, slow. He didn't ask a question. He said, I didn't mean, I'm sorry." Allison looked at him. Just looked. Then nodded once. Later that day, a hallway buzzed with voices. Did you hear what she did? She speaks like 3 languages. No way, she's just a sub." In the office, the assistant principal called her in. His tie was crooked, eyes sharp behind his glasses. "I heard about your class," he said. Allison smoothed her skirt as she sat. "Yes, sir?" "Someone said you translated Hughes into Spanish. And French?" She hesitated. "Just enough to make them listen." He nodded slowly. "You're not what we expected." She smiled without showing teeth. "Neither are they." He didn't answer right away. "Keep doing what you're doing," he said finally. She left the office with a paper-clipped note in hand. No praise, no award, just a reminder. Her room was being watched now. That evening, she sat beside her father. He struggled with the fork, his fingers stiff. She helped him cut the meat. "How's the school?" he asked, his voice gravel and breath. She looked at him for a long moment. They're loud." He chuckled, a dry rasp. "So were you." She laughed then, soft and short, wiped her eyes again before he could see. She stayed up late preparing the next lesson. Hughes, yes, but also Angelo and Baldwin. She picked a single line from each, wrote them out on slips of paper. They'd draw one and speak on it, she decided. Not a lecture, a conversation. The next morning, as she unlocked her classroom door, there was already someone waiting, a girl with round glasses and nervous hands. "Miss Allison?" "Yes?" The girl bit her lip. "Do you think, if I work hard, could I go to college, like a real one?" Allison didn't answer right away. She opened the door, held it wide. "I think," she said finally, You can do more than that. They went in together. The fans still didn't work. The desks still had names carved into them. The lights still flickered. But something had shifted. This time, they were listening. The whispers followed her now, soft, trailing her steps like shadows in the hallway. That's her. The one with the poetry. She made Malik apologize. Some said it with curiosity, others with annoyance, a few with quiet admiration they didn't want to admit. She still walked the same, quietly, carefully, avoiding the sticky spots on the floor tiles. But now, people watched. She felt it. The same way you feel heat through glass. In the teacher's lounge, the fridge buzzed too loud. Someone had left a yogurt uncovered, and the smell was faintly sour. Allison sat in the far corner, eating crackers and canned tuna from a Tupperware she didn't remember packing. The door opened with a squeak. A man in a red tie walked in, papers under his arm. Vice Principal Haynes. Miss Allison. His voice was smooth, practiced. She blinked, set her fork down. Yes, sir? He sat across from her without asking. But I heard you had them quoting Hughes, translating, engaged even. They listened. She said it without pride. More like a fact she hadn't expected either. He nodded, thoughtful. But that's more than most get out of 9B. She sipped her water, watching him. He leaned in, elbows on his knees. Tell me something, Miss Allison. Why poetry? She didn't answer right away. Then, it makes people hear each other without yelling. He smiled like someone who didn't fully understand, but wanted credit for asking. Interesting. Well, keep doing what works. When he stood to leave, he added, We'll be watching. That last part sat with her all afternoon. 2 days later, a letter arrived in the front office. A parent complaint, formal, typed. Why, it read, is my son being taught exclusively black poets? What relevance does Maya Angelou have to algebra-bound ninth graders? And what's this about French? My tax dollars. Allison read the copy twice, her face blank. The principal called her in. His office smelled of pine cleaner and anxiety. His tie was looser than usual. Just parents being parents, he said. But this is delicate. Allison sat still. Would you like me to change the curriculum? He rubbed his forehead. No, not yet. Just document everything. If they keep learning, you'll be fine. That night, she went through her folders, made copies, highlighted dates, wrote out lesson plans in longhand, underlining objectives and state standards. She included excerpts of student work, marginalia in pencil, notes scribbled in the margins. I didn't know poems could be angry. I felt this in my chest. This reminds me of my mom. She slipped it all into a worn red folder labeled simply, Proof. The next day, a substitute math teacher, tall, pale, 40-ish, lingered in her doorway during passing period. You're Allison, right? She looked up from her desk. Yes? You're the one with the poetry circus. There was no humor in his face, only a dry curiosity, like a man poking something in a jar. She nodded once. Interesting method, he said. But you know, most of these kids don't need inspiration. They need discipline. Allison stood. They need someone who doesn't think they're already lost. He blinked, smiled, walked away. Later that afternoon, someone knocked gently after the bell. Mr. Freeman, older, wiry, white beard trimmed like a pastor's. Social studies. 23 years in the same building. He stood holding a small notebook. May I? He asked. She gestured to the empty seat beside her desk. I heard what you did with 9B. That's something. She didn't speak. He tapped the notebook. I've been teaching American history here since the first Bush was president. And I've tried, Miss Allison. Lord knows I've tried. But I've never seen those kids sit that still for anything but fire drills. She let out a small laugh, surprised. I just wanted to say, he continued, whatever it is you're doing, it's worth doing. She looked down at her hands. Thank you. Also, he added, clearing his throat, I had one of your girls come to me yesterday, asked where she could find a copy of the Constitution in Spanish. He shook his head slowly. That ever happened to me before? Never. That night, a girl named Denai waited after class. Miss Allison, she said, can I ask you something? Allison set her bag down. Of course. The girl fidgeted, playing with the zipper on her backpack. Do you think someone like me could go to college? Like for real? Even if, nobody in my house even finished high school? Allison stepped closer, quiet. What I think, she said softly, is that you can go wherever you want, and you can stay there. The girl didn't speak for a while. Then, my uncle says books are for people with savings accounts. Allison leaned on the desk. Your uncle's wrong. The next morning, a memo landed in her mailbox. She'd been invited, or rather voluntold, as teachers said, to present at the district's instructional conference. A model lesson, 20 minutes. Open to teachers, board members, maybe press. She held the paper in both hands like it might vanish if she blinked. Her heart thumped once, twice. In the hallway, Malik, the boy who'd mocked her that first day, nodded at her as he passed. Not a word, just a small nod. At home, her father was having a good day. His hands were steady enough to hold the spoon. They ate chicken and rice from matching bowls. I need your help, she said suddenly. He looked up, eyebrows raised. I'm speaking at a thing for the district. It's a big deal. He gave her a smile that made her chest ache. Well then, he said, you better practice. They moved to the living room. She cleared a space between the coffee table and his old recliner. She held the book like a pulpit. I'm not used to speaking in front of suits. Her father chuckled. Speak like you spoke to me when you were 10. You made me cry with that story about the dog and the fire hydrant. She laughed, startled by the memory. Just be you, baby, but louder. On the morning of the presentation, the auditorium smelled of polished wood and nerves. Chairs scraped, coffee brewed in silver urns in the back. She stood behind the podium with the lights hot on her face. Today, she began, I want to talk about voices, the kind we hear and the kind we ignore. She held up a slip of paper, one of the student quotes from her folder. This reminded me of my mom. The audience was quiet. Some leaned in. These students aren't empty. They're full. What they need, what we need, is to listen. Then she read a short piece. One page, a Langston Hughes poem, followed by one from a student named Tiara. Tiara's was better. When she finished, no one clapped right away. Just silence, full and still. Then someone stood. Applause spread slowly. Some teachers wiped their eyes. One woman in a business suit murmured, "My God." Backstage, she sat down on a folding chair and took off her shoes. Her feet were trembling. Her phone buzzed. A message from the front office. "Come see us when you return." Good news. She stared at it for a long moment, then closed her eyes. The smell of the auditorium clung to her clothes, wood polish and dust, and something new: respect. A white envelope waited for her on Monday morning, slipped under her classroom door, creased once down the middle. The front bore the seal of the school district, and her name, typed, no title. Just Allison May. She turned it over, her hands suddenly cool. The room around her was still quiet. No students yet, no buzz of the hall. Only the sound of the old fan groaning softly at the window, and her breath. Inside, a letter. Congratulations. Your submission. Voices in Translation, Teaching Empathy Through Poetry, has been nominated for the district-wide grant initiative, Literature for All. Your classroom will be evaluated for pilot expansion. She read it twice, then once more, just to feel it again. She didn't smile, not right away. She sat with it. Let the weight of it settle into her chest like warm tea. Later that afternoon, she pinned the letter on the fridge next to a faded grocery list and a magnet shaped like South Carolina. Her father stood beside her, hands steady today, voice rough. That from the district? She nodded. About time, he muttered, then gently tapped the page. Don't forget who you are. I won't, she whispered. They stood in silence for a moment, a quiet moment, but full. 2 days later, she was summoned to the principal's office again. The same pine cleaner, the same window blinds tilted just a little off, but this time there were 3 people waiting. The principal, Vice Principal Haynes, and someone she didn't know, a tall woman in a gray suit with sharp eyes and a smooth voice. We'd like you, the woman said, to develop a pilot course for the spring. Tentative title, Voices of America. You'd have some freedom. Focus on underrepresented authors, modern connections, that sort of thing. Allison blinked. Me? Yes, said the woman. You. Students are responding to your approach. And frankly, the board wants something to point to, something that works. The principal cleared his throat. There may be some resistance. From faculty and parents, Haynes added carefully. Allison sat straighter in her chair. Let them come to the classroom. That night she stayed up late again. This time, not just with books, but with a whiteboard pulled into the living room. She scribbled units in marker, arrows, themes. Her father watched from the recliner, sipping lukewarm tea. You remember when you used to play teacher with the cat? He asked suddenly. She paused, marker still in her hand. You made her sit through math, he said. She just wanted the windowsill. Allison laughed. I made her raise her paw if she wanted to leave. They both smiled. He didn't say what she knew he was thinking. Her grandmother would have been proud. Instead, he just watched her work, his eyes soft. By the following Monday, word had gotten out. Students whispered about a new class coming next semester. One boy asked if there'd be rap involved. Another wanted to know if he could write about his dad. One morning, Tiara, the girl who once asked about college, brought in a flyer. I saw this on the board near the counselor's office. You're doing this, right? The paper was crookedly printed. Voices of America, an elective in modern identity and history. Instructor, Miss Allison May. Allison smoothed the edges. Quiet. Looks like I am. The counselor, a tall man with a nervous voice, stopped her in the hallway later that week. I've had 8 sign-ups already. Most don't even know what it is. She looked at him sideways. And? He shrugged. That's unusual. Maybe, she said, or maybe they're just hungry. As the days passed, the mood in the building shifted. Some teachers, mostly the older ones, kept their distance. One muttered, "Electives don't teach discipline." Another called it fluff. But Mr. Freeman brought her a binder. "Sermons, speeches, oral histories," he said. "Used to teach this before the standards choked it out." She took it with both hands. "Thank you." "I see what you're doing," he said quietly. "Don't let them wear you down." Then, without looking back, he added, "Some of us are still listening." The local news came on a Friday. A young anchor, too cheerful for the weather, interviewed her near the school library, camera crews squeezing into hallways not built for equipment. "Why poetry?" they asked again. Allison smiled lightly, "Because it's the shortest way to the truth." The segment aired that night. They used a clip of Tiara reading her poem, voice shaking but clear. The phone in the office rang the next morning. Parents, alumni, one retired teacher from Ohio who said, "You made me remember why I started." The district approved her raise the same week. Not huge, but real. $47,000 a year. She stared at the pay stub like it was a foreign language. For the first time in months, she bought her father a new mobility chair. Black leather, quiet wheels. He didn't say much when it arrived, just ran his hand over the armrest and nodded. "I was worried," he said later, "that you'd stop pushing." "I almost did," she admitted. He reached for her hand. "But you didn't." Spring came slow that year. The first warm breeze smelled like asphalt and pollen. On the first Monday of the elective, the classroom was full before the bell rang. 31 students. Some who'd never raised their hand in any other class. Some who hadn't smiled since August. There were no desks left. One boy sat on a milk crate. She stood at the front, holding a new anthology. Voices of the Disappeared. "My name is Miss Allison. You may have heard some things. That I only teach poets who've been dead a long time. That I make you write about your feelings." Laughter rippled through the room. "All that's true," she said, "and also not enough." They listened, and when she handed them their first prompt, "Write a story you don't usually tell out loud," no one groaned. No one said, "What's the grade?" They just started writing. In May, the school held its first public assembly since COVID. Parents, students, press. The gymnasium smelled like warm plastic and old banners. The lights buzzed overhead. The principal took the stage, read names, recognized achievements, standard ceremony. Then he cleared his throat. "There's one more award tonight. And this one, well, it wasn't on the schedule." He looked over at Allison, sitting in the front row. "This teacher has done more than teach. She's made students want to learn, want to stay. She's reminded us what schools are for." The crowd clapped, then stood. She was handed a certificate, simple, framed in wood. But then something else happened. Malik, the same boy who once mocked her voice, rolled his eyes at her books, stepped up with a piece of paper in his hand. "Can I say something?" The mic wobbled as he adjusted it. He looked at her, then at the crowd. "I didn't like her when she came. I thought she was just another sub." Some laughter. He nodded. "But she taught me something, not just poems. She taught me to shut up and listen. She taught me I matter." He turned to her. "Miss Allison, you taught me how to be real." He handed her a note. Not a card, just notebook paper, crumpled, folded, rewritten. she held it like it was glass. In the teacher's lounge the next day, someone called her name. Not new teacher, not the poetry lady. Just, Allison, you got a minute? She turned. There were smiles now. Questions about her course. Someone asked if they could borrow her lesson plan. She nodded. She didn't sit alone that day. Her desk still had the old Hughes book on top. The same one from that first week. The corners curled, the pages soft from turning. Beside it, her blue lunchbox. Full this time. Inside, a sandwich wrapped in foil, a note on top. For Miss Allison, from your favorite poet in class. She didn't cry. She just picked up the note, pressed it flat, read it once, and smiled. On graduation day, she stood behind the podium as the last students walked across the stage. She looked out at them, faces she knew, names she could still match to poems. She said, "You don't have to be someone important to do something important. Sometimes you just have to stay. Stay and speak." There were no fireworks, no music swell, just a quiet room full of people finally hearing one another. And one student, quiet, unnoticed till now, turned to their neighbor and whispered, "I think I want to teach."